In the misty morning of Manchester, Elizabeth Williams stood by the kitchen window watching the grey sky. Her small apartment felt cold, not just from the winter chill, but from the weight of responsibility that pressed against her shoulders. At 32, life had not been kind to her. Emma, her 7-year-old daughter, sat at the tiny kitchen table, carefully spreading jam on her toast. Her school uniform was neat but worn, patches carefully sewn by her mother's skilled hands. Elizabeth worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, washing dishes in a local cafe during the day, and doing occasional ironing for neighbors. Money was always tight. Sometimes Elizabeth would calculate their expenses, her fingers tracing numbers on an old notebook, hoping mathematics would somehow make their situation better. Some nights she would eat less so Emma could have a proper meal. Her own dreams of becoming something more had been pushed aside years ago when her husband walked out, leaving her with nothing but a sleeping child and unpaid bills. The alarm clock on the wall ticked loudly, a constant reminder of her endless struggle. Each morning was a battle, preparing lunch for Emma, ensuring her clothes were clean, her homework completed. Elizabeth would wake up at 4:30 a.m., brew cheap coffee in a chipped mug, and plan her day with military precision. Today was different. A small advertisement in the local newspaper caught her eye, a job opportunity that seemed almost impossible. A legal firm in the city centre was looking for an administrative assistant. The job required someone organized, hard-working, and willing to learn. Most applicants would need formal qualifications, but Elizabeth had something more valuable: determination. She looked at Emma, who was now humming a school song, unaware of the financial struggles that consumed her mother's thoughts. Elizabeth remembered her own childhood, growing up in a small village where opportunities were as rare as sunshine in Manchester. Her parents had worked in factories, their lives defined by hard labor and limited horizons. "Finish your breakfast." "Darling?" Elizabeth said softly, helping Emma pack her school bag. Her hands, rough from cleaning and scrubbing, moved with practiced efficiency. Every movement was calculated, every penny accounted for. The walk to Emma's school was short, but meaningful. Elizabeth would hold her daughter's hand, listening to stories about her friends, her teachers, her dreams. These moments were precious, brief windows of joy in their challenging life. At the school gate, she would kneel, adjust Emma's collar, and whisper, "Be brave, be kind, and never stop learning." After dropping Emma, Elizabeth would rush to her first job. The cleaning company paid minimum wage, but she was grateful. Her colleagues were mostly immigrants and single mothers, each with their own story of survival. They supported each other, sharing sandwiches, offering kind words, understanding the unspoken language of struggle. In the afternoon, she would work at the cafe, washing dishes and serving customers. Her smile was her best asset, warm, genuine, hiding the exhaustion that often threatened to overwhelm her. Customers rarely saw the woman behind the uniform, the mother who had dreams beyond these minimum wage jobs. Her evenings were spent ironing clothes for wealthy families in the neighborhood. While pressing expensive shirts and delicate blouses, Elizabeth would dream. She would imagine herself in a different life, educated, professional, capable of providing more for Emma. The job advertisement kept calling her. It represented hope, her possibility of change. But hope was a luxury Elizabeth had learned to manage carefully. She knew dreams could be fragile, like thin glass that could shatter with the slightest pressure. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Elizabeth sat by the window. The city lights flickered outside, a constellation of possibilities. She pulled out an old notebook slightly torn at the edges and began writing. Not a diary, but a plan. A careful, meticulously crafted plan that would change their lives, her. Fingers stained with cleaning chemicals and cafe grease moved across the page. Each word was a step, each sentence a strategy. Elizabeth Williams was not just surviving. She was preparing to transform her world. Outside, Manchester's night descended. Cold and uncertain, but inside this small apartment, something was stirring. A mother's unwavering hope, a silent revolution waiting to unfold. The morning sunlight crept through the dusty windows of Thompson & Partners legal firm. Richard Thompson, a seasoned lawyer, with salt-and-pepper hair and kind eyes, shuffled through the stack of job applications. Most looked polished, typed on expensive paper with impressive university letterheads. But one application caught his attention, slightly crumpled, handwritten, with an honesty that jumped off the page. Elizabeth Williams. No fancy degrees, no professional experience, just raw determination written between the lines of her application. Her handwriting was neat, each word carefully formed, revealing a discipline that spoke volumes about her character. The receptionist, Margaret, had already dismissed the application. "She's not qualified," she had said, pushing the paper aside. But Richard saw something different. He remembered his own mother, a cleaning woman who had worked tirelessly to send him to school. That afternoon, Elizabeth arrived for the interview. Her second-hand blazer was pressed carefully, her shoes polished to a shine. She carried a small bag with Emma's drawing tucked inside, a good luck charm. Her hands trembled slightly as she entered the office, but her eyes remained steady. Richard watched her walk in. She was different from other applicants, no pretense, no elaborate stories. Just a woman who desperately wanted a chance to change her life. When she spoke, her words were simple but powerful. She talked about her daughter, her dreams, her willingness to learn anything. "I might not have a university degree," Elizabeth said, "but I know how to work hard. I can learn faster than anyone. I just need one opportunity." Something in her voice, a mixture of vulnerability and strength, touched Richard. He remembered his own struggles, the people who had given him chances when he least expected them. In Elizabeth, he saw potential that went beyond paper qualifications. The interview was unconventional. Instead of formal questions, Richard asked about her life. She spoke about juggling multiple jobs, caring for Emma, her night studies. Each word revealed a resilience that no certificate could capture. "I want to understand legal processes," Elizabeth explained. "Not just for a job, but to help people like me who get lost in complicated systems." Richard made a decision that would change both their lives. He offered her a position as a junior legal assistant, with a condition: she would need to take evening classes and continue learning. The salary was modest, but it was more than she had ever earned. When Elizabeth heard the news, she couldn't speak. Tears formed in her eyes, tears of relief, hope, and disbelief. Her hands shook as she accepted the offer. Margaret, the receptionist, watched in surprise. This was not a typical hiring process. That evening, Elizabeth called her mother. "Something incredible happened," she whispered, careful not to wake Emma. Her mother, working in a textile factory, listened with quiet pride. Generations of struggle were finally giving way to possibility. Richard watched her potential. He saw beyond her current circumstances. Many would have seen a cleaner, a single mother struggling to survive. He saw a future legal professional, someone who understood real-world challenges. Emma was the first to know. Elizabeth danced with her in their small apartment, explaining her new job. "We're going to have better days," she promised, holding her daughter tight. Emma didn't fully understand, but she felt her mother's joy. The first few weeks were challenging. Elizabeth worked extra hours, studied during lunch breaks, and continued her evening classes. She learned filing systems, legal terminology, and office protocols. Richard assigned her mentors who could guide her journey. Her colleagues, initially, looked at her differently. A woman who cleaned offices was now working as a legal assistant, but Elizabeth's dedication spoke louder than their whispers. She arrived early, stayed late, and approached every task with remarkable precision. Margaret, who initially doubted her, became her unexpected ally. She would quietly help Elizabeth understand complex procedures, sharing tips and encouragement. The office dynamics were changing, challenged by Elizabeth's remarkable transformation. Richard watched her growth with quiet satisfaction. He believed in second chances, in the power of human potential. Elizabeth was proving that talent wasn't about where you started, but how hard you were willing to work. As Manchester's evening lights began to twinkle, Elizabeth sat in the office, studying a legal document. Her journey was just beginning, but hope had finally found its way home. The evening classroom buzzed with the sound of turning pages and scratching pens. Elizabeth sat in the second row, her notebook filled with careful annotations, her mind completely focused on the legal principles being discussed. Around her, younger students looked tired after a long day, but she remained alert, driven by a hunger for knowledge that burned brighter than her exhaustion. Her life had become a delicate dance of responsibilities. Mornings began before sunrise, preparing Emma for school. Days were spent at Thompson & Partners, where she had slowly earned respect through her dedication. Evenings meant class, and nights were for studying and helping Emma with her homework. Richard. Thompson had become more than just her employer. He was a mentor, quietly watching her progress. Sometimes he would leave additional study materials on her desk, old case files, legal journals, books that would help her understand the deeper complexities of law. Emma was her biggest supporter. The young girl would sit beside her mother during study sessions, creating her own legal documents with crayons and scrap paper. "Mommy's going to be a lawyer," she would tell her school friends with absolute pride. The law school instructors were initially skeptical. Elizabeth was older than most students, without traditional academic background, but she quickly proved herself. Her practical experience combined with her determination made her stand out. Where other students memorized theories, she understood real-world applications. One particularly challenging evening, Elizabeth struggled with a complex contract law concept. Her brain felt like it was wrapped in fog, the legal terminology dancing before her eyes. Emma, sensing her mother's frustration, brought her a cup of tea and said, "You can do it, Mommy." Those simple words became her motivation. Elizabeth broke down the complex legal concept into smaller, manageable pieces. She created diagrams, wrote explanations, practiced explaining the concept as if she were teaching Emma. By midnight, she understood. Her colleagues at the law firm started noticing changes. The woman who once cleaned offices was now discussing legal precedents during lunch breaks. Margaret, the receptionist, would bring her extra sandwiches, watching her transformation with quiet admiration. Financial challenges remained constant. Some weeks Elizabeth would have just enough money for bus fare and basic groceries. She mended her own clothes, packed lunch from home, and never complained. Every penny saved was an investment in her future. Richard occasionally offered additional support. He understood the challenges of a single mother pursuing education. Sometimes he would give her extra flexible hours or allow her to bring Emma to the office during school holidays. These small kindnesses meant everything. The law school environment was challenging. Most students came from privileged backgrounds with expensive laptops and designer clothes. Elizabeth's resources were limited: an old second-hand laptop donated by Richard, second-hand textbooks, and an unbreakable spirit. Her study technique was unique. She would read legal texts aloud, explaining concepts to Emma, who would listen with wide-eyed attention. "Imagine law is like a superhero protecting people," she would tell her daughter, making complex ideas simple and exciting. Weekends became study marathons. While other mothers might enjoy leisure time, Elizabeth would be surrounded by legal books, Emma quietly playing nearby or helping her organize study cards. Their small apartment became a makeshift classroom, filled with determination and hope. The university noticed her potential. Her assignments were not just completed, but excellently researched. Instructors who initially saw her as an outsider now sought her perspectives. Her real-world experience added depth to classroom discussions. Emma was learning too. She understood the value of education, watching her mother's relentless pursuit of knowledge. "When I grow up, I want to help people like you do," she would tell Elizabeth, her eyes shining with admiration. Slowly, consistently, Elizabeth was transforming. She was no longer just a cleaner or a legal assistant. She was becoming a legal professional, breaking through barriers of social expectations and personal limitations. Richard would sometimes watch her from his office, a proud smile crossing his face. He had seen potential in her that others had missed. Elizabeth was proving that education was not about where you started, but how passionately you pursued your dreams. As Manchester's night settled in, Elizabeth continued studying, Emma sleeping peacefully beside her. Another day of learning, growing, and believing in the power of persistence had passed. Her journey was far from over, but hope had become her most powerful companion. The hospital corridor seemed endless, white and cold. Elizabeth's world had suddenly stopped when Emma collapsed at school, her small body burning with high fever. Doctors moved quickly, their faces serious and concerned. "Acute kidney infection," the doctor explained, his words cutting through Elizabeth like sharp knives. Medical tests revealed Emma needed specialized treatment, expensive medication, and potential surgery. The estimated cost was more than Elizabeth had earned in 2 years. Her savings, carefully collected over months of hard work, would barely cover the first week of treatment. Richard Thompson watched her closely as she made desperate phone calls, her professional composure crumbling with each conversation. "I'll help you," Richard said quietly, understanding the unspoken terror in her eyes. But Elizabeth was proud. She had always believed in solving her own problems, in showing her daughter that challenges were meant to be conquered. The hospital became her second home. She would work partial shifts at the law firm, then rush to Emma's bedside. Her law school. Assignments were completed in stolen moments between medical consultations and hospital waiting rooms. Emma, despite her illness, remained brave. "Don't worry, Mommy," she would say, her small hand holding her mother's. "We're strong together." Those words became Elizabeth's lifeline, her source of unexpected courage. Margaret from the law firm started a fundraising campaign. Colleagues contributed what they could, small amounts that gradually grew. Richard used his professional network, quietly reaching out to contacts who might help. Elizabeth's legal studies took an unexpected turn. She began researching medical insurance laws, patient rights, and healthcare support systems. What started as a personal crisis became a potential breakthrough in her understanding of legal support for vulnerable families. The medical bills continued to mount. Elizabeth worked extra hours, took online freelance legal research jobs, and cut every possible expense. Her determination was a force stronger than any financial challenge. One particularly difficult night, as Emma slept in the hospital bed, Elizabeth reviewed her options. She prepared a comprehensive legal strategy, analyzing every possible financial support mechanism. Her approach was methodical, precise, the mark of a true emerging legal professional. Richard witnessed her transformation. The woman who once cleaned offices was now navigating complex medical and legal landscapes with remarkable skill. Her personal challenge was becoming her professional strength. Emma's treatment required multiple specialized procedures. Each medical intervention was a financial and emotional mountain to climb. But Elizabeth refused to be defeated. She negotiated with hospital administrators, explored alternative treatment options, and never lost hope. Her law school professors were stunned by her resilience. What could have been a devastating personal crisis became a remarkable demonstration of professional growth. Elizabeth was turning her personal struggle into a learning experience. The community around her started to notice. Local newspapers heard about her story, a single mother studying law while fighting for her daughter's health. She became an unexpected symbol of resilience and hope. Slowly, medical treatment started, showing positive results. Emma's health began improving. The complex medical procedures that seemed impossible were being managed through Elizabeth's incredible determination and strategic planning. Richard provided more than financial support. He offered flexible working hours, emotional encouragement, and professional guidance. He saw in Elizabeth a potential that went beyond traditional legal expectations. Margaret organized a support network within the law firm. Colleagues contributed not just money, but emotional support. They understood they were witnessing something extraordinary, a woman transforming personal challenge into professional triumph. Elizabeth's approach to Emma's medical challenge revealed her emerging legal skills. She documented every medical interaction, understood patient rights, and navigated complex healthcare systems with increasing confidence. The hospital that once represented fear was now becoming a classroom of unexpected learning. Elizabeth was not just a mother fighting for her child's health, but a future legal professional understanding systemic challenges. As Emma's health gradually improved, Elizabeth realized her journey was about more than survival. It was about creating opportunities, breaking cycles of limitation, and showing her daughter the true meaning of resilience. Manchester's evening light filtered through the hospital window. Elizabeth sat beside her sleeping daughter, her law books open, a subtle smile of determination crossing her face. Another challenge was being transformed into an opportunity. Hope, once again, had found its way home. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Elizabeth stood confidently, her black legal gown pressed perfectly, her hands steady. Years of struggle had led to this moment, her final qualification hearing as a qualified legal advocate. Richard Thompson sat in the back row, watching her with quiet pride. Margaret, who had supported her journey from the beginning, wiped a small tear from her eye. Emma, now 12, sat beside her grandmother, wearing a neat blue dress and looking at her mother with absolute admiration. Elizabeth's case focused on supporting working-class families facing medical and legal challenges. Her personal journey had become her professional mission. She understood poverty not through textbooks, but through lived experience. The panel of legal examiners listened carefully. Her presentation was more than a technical legal argument. It was a powerful narrative of human resilience. She spoke about healthcare access, legal support for single parents, and systemic challenges faced by vulnerable communities. Every family deserves support, Elizabeth said, her voice clear and strong. Legal knowledge should not be a privilege, but a right for everyone. Her examination wasn't just about legal knowledge. It was about understanding human experiences, bridging gaps between complex legal systems and real-world challenges. The examiners recognized something special in her approach. Emma watched her mother, remembering their difficult journey. The hospital nights, the financial struggles, the endless study sessions, all had led to this moment. She understood that her mother's success was their collective triumph. The examination lasted hours. Elizabeth answered every question with precision, drawing from her practical experiences. Her responses were not just academically correct, but emotionally intelligent. She demonstrated an understanding of law that went beyond traditional legal training. Richard remembered the day he first met her, a cleaning woman with a dream. Now she was about to become a qualified legal advocate, specializing in family and healthcare law. Her transformation was nothing short of extraordinary when the results were announced. The courtroom erupted in applause. Elizabeth had passed with exceptional marks. Her journey from cleaning offices to becoming a legal professional was complete, but for her, it was just the beginning. Margaret hugged her, whispering, "You did it." Years of support and belief had culminated in this moment. The law firm that once employed her as a cleaner now celebrated her as a qualified legal professional. Emma ran to her mother, throwing her arms around her. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice filled with pure love and admiration. Their journey had been about more than personal success. It was about breaking generational limitations. Elizabeth's first case as a qualified lawyer focused on supporting families facing medical and financial challenges. She understood their struggles intimately. Each client was not just a case file, but a human story waiting to be heard and supported. The local community began recognizing her work. She started a small legal support center, offering affordable and accessible legal advice to working-class families. Her fees were flexible, her approach compassionate. Richard continued mentoring her, providing guidance and support. He saw in her not just a successful lawyer, but a catalyst for systemic change. Elizabeth was transforming legal support from a privilege to an accessible service. Her mother, who had worked in textile factories her entire life, watched her daughter with quiet pride. Generations of struggle had finally found expression through Elizabeth's remarkable journey. Emma was inspired. She started talking about becoming a lawyer, understanding that education was a powerful tool for transformation. Her mother's journey had shown her that dreams were not limited by current circumstances. The small Manchester community that had witnessed Elizabeth's journey now celebrated her success. She was more than a lawyer. She was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of persistent hard work. As evening settled over the city, Elizabeth sat in her small office preparing for her next case. Emma did her homework nearby, occasionally asking legal questions. Their apartment, once a symbol of struggle, was now a hub of learning and inspiration. Her journey had proven one fundamental truth: with determination, support, and unwavering hope, any dream was possible. The city lights flickered outside, witnessing another story of human triumph.